Joining me now is Dr. Alexander Van Tulleken. He's an infectious disease expert. He has worked in these Ebola hot zones and is a senior fellow at the Institute for International Humanitarian Affairs at Fordham University. Dr. Van Tulleken, thanks for joining us. Health officials in Madrid say that this nurse's assistant only entered the infected priest's room 2 times, once to treat him and then once after he died to collect some of his things. She says she was wearing a protective suit. So how could she have contracted the disease?
Well, it is very concerning, and it does seem like there's been a failure here. I mean, there's either been a failure of protocol in taking gear off or putting it on, or there's been a failure in the protocol of the gear, which is what it sounds like has happened. To the best of our knowledge, this virus only transmits itself with bodily fluids coming into contact with mouth or eyes, a place where you can get exposed like that, or with an open cut. So something like that must have happened. I don't think there's any suggestion here that the virus has become airborne or anything like this. But what it should do is make anyone running a hospital sit up and take note and say it's not good enough to have some protective gear, it's not good enough to have a protocol in the drawer. The staff have to be practiced, drilled, trained, well rested. There need to be adequate staff. Everyone needs to know what they're doing. This is about contingency planning. That's how you stop people getting Ebola.
There does seem to be a disconnect. I noticed you said that as far as we know, everything we know suggests that it's only you can only contract it from fluids. It's not airborne. But there does seem to be a disconnect with stories like this. Doctors and nurses, seemingly the most informed and one would hope protected individuals becoming infected. Why do you think? I mean, obviously they're on the front lines, but one would also think that they know how to not get it. Why do you think this is happening?
So it's a really interesting question, that, and it's probably the most important question to address if we're trying to reassure people at home. And I think it's very important to say, if you're at home in America, you shouldn't worry about getting Ebola. Doctors and nurses will be wearing protective gear, but on the other hand, they're exposed to bodily fluids. Blood, vomit, diarrhea, these kind of things are in much, much more abundance if you're caring for someone who has Ebola. And this was someone who's in late-stage Ebola who subsequently died from it. And so we can imagine that their symptoms would have been dramatic. And so the other issue is that we don't deal with patients this sick every day. It's nerve-wracking to deal with them, and the protocols that keep you safe are quite difficult to follow. I mean, my brother is on the Ebola response team for London, and they drill, they practice, they rehearse all the time, and I don't get any sense that that's what was happening here. So, yes, doctors and nurses can get it, but they're exposed in a very different way to the way you would be on the subway. And if you think the guy who discovered Ebola said he would confidently sit next to somebody on a subway, and I think that's right, who had Ebola. I think that's right, that it is a difficult disease to catch unless someone is very ill and shedding large amounts of virus in bodily fluids.
We learned today that a Norwegian staffer with the group Doctors Without Borders has contracted Ebola. Is it getting difficult for these aid organizations to get staffers, volunteers, doctors, nurses to go to West Africa?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of people, if you do this kind of work, I do this kind of work, and lots of my friends do, the resistance you get is not just personal fear, but also my mother wouldn't want me to go, my son wouldn't want me to go, my family wouldn't want me to go, and so on. And so you have a big resistance to people leaving, and we've seen that with the NBC cameraman, with lots of people. You know, the interview is poor old dad saying, you know, we didn't want him to go, he's crazy, and we know he's going to go back. So huge human resources problems getting staff, and very much needed staff. I mean, if you think why are healthcare workers contracting the virus in West Africa, it's because they're working 20-hour shifts. It's because inside their suits it's 115 degrees. See, I speak to colleagues there, and it's so easy to wipe a brow with an infected hand. It's so easy to get something in your mouth and not follow protocol because you're exhausted and you're frightened.
Yeah, it's the Lord's work, but very dangerous as well. Dr. Alexander Van Tulleken, thank you so much. Appreciate it, as always.